and welcome to the Everyday Board Game Podcast with Daniel.
And Daniel.
Good morning, Daniel.
Again, it is not morning. It's been a long day. Let's not start this again. At least you didn't do the creepy voice.
I know. I like doing like the overly small one. We have a couple of our viewers in chat today. They've been fun. We just finished filming an episode. That was a good one, talking about large games and large games and big and small packages.
Small packages.
Yeah. And during my gameplay, he brought up, I forgot to talk about Guilds of London. I've had that on my shelf of shame for nearly 2 years now. I want to say maybe even longer. The very first time, Daniel, that you, me, and I believe Dom went to Tucson to do the trade-ins, that's when, the very first time we did that, that's when I got Guilds of London.
So was that the snowstorm one or the one before that?
I think it was before the snowstorm. Yeah.
That's crazy.
It was a really fun game. I'm glad I finally got it. It was way simpler than I thought it was going to be. But there's something about all the iconography that is just, it was so intimidating to get to the table. And then we played it and like 45 minutes later, we were done. We're like, wow, that was it? Like, that's all it took? 16 rounds, and it took us like a minute and a half per round, maybe. It was ridiculous. But it was really fun. I think you might dig it. I'm excited to try it again. I don't know if it'll stay in my collection, but for now, it's gonna.
Cool.
Yeah.
No, I haven't played it, so.
And my shelf of shame is now thinning out now because of it. Partially.
Yeah, you still have what, like 70 games on there?
I can count, and I'll get back to you in a few hours.
So I'm just getting the top 8 debate ready over here. So I got the papers that I pulled out of the hat.
Sounds good. So while you're doing that, I'll tell the people about our top 8 debate. This week, we chose the top 8 games that have action points in it. And what do we mean by action points? Let's talk about that. Daniel, do you want to explain what action points is, since you were the one who came up with the list?
Sure can. Let me just pull that up real quick. And I have it here. Action points is defined by Board Game Geek as a player receives a number of action points on their turn, and they may spend them on a variety of ways. Yep,
that's right. So a common thing that you would imagine at first glance is Pandemic. That's probably the most obvious one. Forbidden Island. You're more familiar with those. And that means that you take X number of actions per turn. That's all you can take. Some of these games have you do one thing for multiple actions. Like some examples of that are like to call, where it'll say, oh, well, this takes 3 actions to do this. You can still do it, but that's a lot more of your turn. And so there's a lot of ways to handle that. We picked the top 8 games on Board Game Geek in that ranking. We went to the website, boardgamegeek.com, who stole one of our episodes ideas. And listen to the previous episode. That'll make more sense. And then we choose a category, designer, publisher, whatever. In this example, a mechanism. Put it in rank from the top highest voted, and then we debate on the ones that Daniel and I have both played. Daniel, why is that?
Just for the fact that we can make a sound argument for the games that we're supposed to argue for. If we haven't played it, then it's just going to be like, oh, I guess you're right. I don't know why you wouldn't be right. I haven't played it. So it just gives us a more heavy debate.
Absolutely. So if you're in the comment, or if you're talking in our chat, by all means, or if you're watching us live, feel free to weigh in on your thoughts on any of those and weigh in on our debate while we're arguing it. But before we do that, let's talk about honorable mentions, because we also put this on Facebook and have the viewers at home vote for it.
Yes, yeah, you can always find our polls put on the Board Game Revolution community on Facebook. This is where we always do it. This is also the fan vote, which we will talk about a little later, how important the fan vote is. Do you want to say the first honorable mention?
Yeah, let's do that. So the top one that was highest voted for, it was added on by Tom, not of MySpace fame, but Tom on Board Game Revolution. He said Hansa Teutonica, which I have a strong feeling that if both of us had played it, it would be up there.
Well, what's funny about this, I'd never even heard of this game. I guess it just recently got a re-release because it's back from 2009, and then everybody's talking about it right now, and I'm like, where did this game come from?
I had known about it, but yeah, you're right. It's been a while.
So the next game on our list that's been added, you just mentioned it, and this was added by Eric, and that is To Call.
Yeah, To Call. That's the only thing I have against it, is that doing certain things cost different amounts of actions. But one of the neat things about it has a hexagonal grid board that you put out all these hexagonal tiles, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a number of stepping stones that go in between the edges of the tiles, and the number of stepping stones is how many space or how many action points it takes for you to actually move. So if one tile or two tiles are facing each other, one has 2 steps, one has one, it's 3 action points you have to do to cross between them. I think that's really
All
neat
right.
too.
So before we move on, So Very Wrong About Games says the reason why you're hearing more about Hansa Teutonica is because it got a big box. You were mentioning that earlier, that Shut Up,
Yeah.
Shit Down was talking about it, and it was like it got a regular box.
Yeah, it finally got a regular size box, but they call it the big box because it has the expansion in it. That's right. But it's a I if you haven't seen that episode, after we're done with ours, go watch Shut Up and Sit Down's recent review of Hansa Teutonica. All right, that's one. That is Randy. No, I'm sorry. Ben added this one, and that's Wasteland Express Delivery Service.
Probably your least
I'll
favorite
let you
game that's
take it
in
away
this
from
poll.
here. That is easily my least favorite game that's on this poll.
No, I didn't put this on my honorable mentions. One, I knew we were going to talk about it here because I kind of looked at the poll, but also the action points are there, and I do like it. But to me, Wasteland is more about the pick up and deliver aspect of it than the action
Yeah.
points. But no, I like the game. It's very phenomenal. It's very thematic. I understand why you don't like it and you have problems with it, but that's because you're wrong.
Oh, very much.
But no, it's fair. I enjoy the game. Um, it's a pick up and deliver in a post-apocalyptic world. Those are things that are just gonna sing to me anyways. I have a great time with it. It's a great Pandasaurus game. Freaking huge. So it's not
Yeah.
like what we were talking about last time when it comes in a big game in a small package. No, this thing is massive.
Yeah. Yep. And Wasteland Express Delivery Service had 4 votes.
Next on our list here is Randy, the one that you were trying to skip for, and that's Tainted Grail, which also had 4 votes. Now, I personally haven't played Tainted Grail. I know someone who has it, but it looks good. It's just not something that I wanted to pay an exorbitant amount of money for.
Yeah. Yeah, it does look neat. I'm curious about it, but I'm the same way. I just didn't want to get it. Nate, not the one that's in chat, but another Nate said Sleeping Gods, and that has 3 votes.
Oh man, I want to play this one so bad. I love Ryan Lockett games. We have one on the list that we'll talk about in a little bit. I really, really want to try this. It looks really good, and it's funny because Sleeping Gods here is got its start from the game that is actually on our list. It formed 2 games off this one. You got the story one, which is Near and Far, which is the actual successor to Above and Below, the one I keep mentioning. But Sleeping Gods also got a lot of their stuff from Above and Below as well. So
Yeah.
I'm excited. I want to try this one. I know someone who has it, and I really want to play it.
Yep. That's fair. Cool. And that's on you.
All right. So Aaron says here, the next one on our list is Pandemic, the original game. So spoiler alert, we do have a Pandemic on our list because you mentioned it earlier. That is the first one you would think of that goes on here. We go with the highest rate of a series, which would be season 1, Pandemic Legacy season 1. But Pandemic got 3 votes, and I don't disagree with this. It's a phenomenal game, but Legacy is just so much better.
Yeah, I'm honestly surprised it only got 3 votes. To be completely honest, I just didn't know.
I think a big part of it too is a lot of people are pandemicked out. There's so many pandemics out there. You got Iberia,
Right.
you got Cthulhu, you have the Legacy games, you have your pandemic clones.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Chad, he added our next one, and that got 2 votes, and that's Cthulhu Wars. I haven't played it.
I haven't played it. It's another one of those that looks interesting. I would like to play it and try it, but it's also something that was really, really expensive, and I didn't want to pay, what was it, like $300 for it? Not that I was saying you're wrong if you do. I didn't have the money at the time, and there was other things that I was kickstarting at the time. It looks interesting.
Yep.
They're doing a 2-player version of it here soon. I think it's on GameFound right now, so maybe, I don't know. It's a area control game from what I understand with action points, and I have a area control game that I love in Rising Sun. So next one on our list here is another one that gets compared a lot to Pandemic, and that is Flashpoint Fire Rescue, added by Dan. Represent.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, Flashpoint Fire Rescue. This was one of the first games I got rid of. It sounds weird. And I want to say because I like it, right? But this was one of the first games I genuinely remember owning, being really excited about, playing multiple times, and then going, if I had to pick between this and Pandemic, I'm picking Pandemic at this point. It's just not different enough. It also does the same thing with action point selection, where the number of action points you have, like what you have to do, has a different amount of points.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, of course, I want to run in here and douse the fire, but if I want to lift this person up, it's costing 2 extra points. It's like, but do I really want to? Like, it's just every time that you see something that's more action points, it seems like an instant waste of points and inefficiency. And that's not to knock the game. The game is great. It's really good. It's just I couldn't justify keeping it because Pandemic does everything it does and better.
Yeah, no, I have played it, Flashpoint. I think I have.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a while. I've seen it played quite a few times, and it looks good. I like the theme on it. It's interesting, but yeah, if I had to choose between the two, Pandemic just seems a little bit more streamlined.
Yep, it absolutely is.
And so the last one that was added on our list here was added by Chris and also got 1 vote. Flashpoint Fire Rescue also had 1. And that is Last Will. Now, we were just having a discussion about this one before we started, so I'm going to go ahead and let you take this.
Yeah, so Last Will was about to go on my honorable mentions, but let me tell you why it doesn't. It's a brilliant game. I absolutely adore it, and basically the idea is you're trying to get rid of all your money. Here's why it's not action point selection. You're bidding for turn order, and the turn order gives you a set number of action points. So it's kind of like one of those games where it's like, oh, the earlier I wake up, the more I get to do. That's really time management than it is action point selection. Now, I know that's a fine line between the two. Like, really, it could go either way. But that's why I just didn't include it on my list at all. Just because, not because I didn't like it, because I really like that game. But it's not an action point game at all.
All right, sounds good. So moving into the comment section real quick, I'm just going to go move down for a couple. There's just talks what quick. Action point, huh?
Yes, Nate added, yes, Rising Sun from our comments in there. He's a huge Rising Sun fan. I already knew that.
And so here Brian says he didn't vote for any games, and you're more than welcome not to vote. I would recommend, even if it's the only game you played, go ahead and give it a vote. Let's tell us why you like it so far. And he said the only one he owns and has played is Horrified.
Yeah. And then Michael asked, what is an action point game? And then you had action point game. So you had to clarify number of actions, how much you spent. But really, the next one that was added on, and for some reason all my things are popping up, John said to call, which I do agree.
And then Jerry added that he's a sucker for the theme on Horrified, which I don't blame him. So am I.
Yeah. And
Ben, go to Ben.
Yeah. Ben said, I added Wasteland Express as the way the action points simulate shifting gears in your car, making you move fast. Farther on the board. I think it's neat, small detail that works well.
I do like that fact about it. I get what he's saying there. The momentum mechanism is interesting in that game. Again, I see it more for the pickup and delivery part of it. And it wouldn't have made our list anyways because it was too far down. So Randy says, definitely missing a great one, Tainted Grail, which I believe he added.
Yep. And then Kevin said, I'm surprised Tikal doesn't have many votes. It is an amazing action points game. So much so few action points. There's so much to do, so few action points. It is certainly one of the older, if not the oldest game on the list that could be the reason.
And then there was a nice little conversation in there where Joe was saying he voted for it. Kevin agreed that it is a good game. They were comparing it to Mexica and Java, particularly at 2 players. And they were just saying that they haven't played it at the Mass Trilogy, all the Mass Trilogy games.
Good little discussion. So I have 3 games on my list, on my honorable mentions list that I wanted to talk about. But I'll start because I know one of them is kind of a flub, and it's kind of a cheat, and it's really more of a worker placement. But the worker you place down determines how many actions you take from that worker. And so in a way it's action selection, but really it's not. But I wanted to bring it up. Tricarion, an amazing game from Mind Clash Games. I've talked about it a lot. I think it's a brilliant game, but if you haven't seen it, go look into it. If you know what it is, you probably like it already. On to you.
I do need to try it. I get what you're saying. And as we're going to there with the flub, and we were talking about Wasteland Delivery Service, there is a game I do have to mention that didn't make our list. We decided to eliminate it, and that would be Blood Rage, because one, both of us haven't played it in a while, so we can't really make a good sound argument for it when it comes to the action points, because I don't even remember if there's action points in it. I remember the drafting, and you play the drafted cards. Yep. That's all I really remember, and it's dudes on a map. So that's why we both decided, you know what, let's just take this out because we're not familiar with it. And
not enough to argue it right now.
Not for this category.
Right.
So before anybody adds that, but because again, you can always find these on Board Game Geek under their selection, this one being action point games or points. So my first honorable mention here is one I talked about probably in the last podcast slightly, that made my short list, and that's Arkham Horror LCG. It's probably one of my favorite solo games, and I'm not going to go too much on it because I've talked about it a lot. I do enjoy that it gives you the campaign. You have only so many things you can do. You get, I think, 2 or 3 action points. It's been a little bit since I played it. But you could do this, you could do that, you can do this. But you always have those amount of action points. You're playing your cards and doing this and that. It can be difficult at times, and trying to keep up with everything that's been put out is kind of hard. And I've griped about this before. It's like, oh, I just bought one of the expansions, but then I got to buy these 2 tiny expansions and one more other bigger box expansions, which can be hard to find to finish this campaign. They don't explain it to you until you buy the first one, and then you read it and go, really? This is not the full campaign? I thought the big boxes were the campaigns and the little boxes were the one-shots. Nope. No, that's my one major gripe with the Arkham Horror LCG, or just LCGs in general. I know they want to produce more money, but I like what they're going with the new one that's out, the Marvel one, Marvel Champions, whereas you have character packs that are coming out, but the boxes themselves are the campaigns and the stories and the one-shots and stuff like that.
Yeah, which makes a lot more sense, really.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it makes sense that that's an expansion instead of a continuation of the story.
Yeah.
My number 2 is another good cooperative game, and that's Dead Men Tell No Tales, which you haven't gotten a chance to try this one, have you?
Yeah, that's that mean one where you're going on the burning ship, right?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really terrifying. It is nightmare fuel as far as a co-op game. It's super tough, but it's not undoable. And so your action points are very simple. It's the dice that you have, and it's how you're going in there. You have a certain number of points that you can use. I don't want to belabor it too long. I just think it's an absolutely brilliant game. When I saw it on my list, I'm like, this is my chance to talk about it. It's been on my list ever since the very first time I played it, and I think it's a brilliant game. It's definitely, if you like Pandemic.
What's funny is because you asked if I haven't played it. You remember the first time you played it was at my house?
I didn't remember the first time I had played it, to be honest.
It was here in my living room.
Yeah. How long ago
It was,
was that? It was before I started tracking it, I think.
yeah, it was before we tracked it. It was because you bought it on one of our Tucson trips that we were talking about,
Mhm.
and we played it, I think, the following week or so after, because we wanted to play all the games that we bought, so we got together and played it. It was on one of our Wednesday game nights, and yeah, no, I remember. I dug it. It's mean as all get up, but I had a good time with it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's awesome. But Dead
So
Man,
my next two picks are kind of cheaties, but they're on the list, so I put them on my honorable mentions. And because I wanted to talk about them. These are two games that I hardly ever talk about on any of our lists, and that is the first one being Dinosaur Island. There are action points in it, but it's at its core a worker placement because you want to see how you're spending your stuff. Do I want more dinosaurs? Do I want to put out fill? Do I need to raise my security? So there's all that. It's legitimately Jurassic Park in the box because you got to worry about, the dinosaurs breaking out and eating your people, but it's okay if they eat the rude ones because screw those guys.
yeah, yeah,
It's such a table eater, though. I think on my dining room table, it takes up the whole table, and that's just a game. I need to get like little TV trays for everybody to put their sideboard stuff in there. So it's crazy. It's a big one. It's well produced. There's one expansion for it out, and I know they're coming up with that new one that just kickstart Dinosaur World. Phenomenal game. A bit
yeah.
complicated when you first learn it to play it and stuff like that, but I enjoyed it. I actually have a copy of it.
Very cool. Yeah, that's a very good pick. And my number one is it's the only game that has a variable amount of action points per turn. It actually changes depending on what cubes fall out of the tower.
Oh, yeah, I know which one it is. We actually talked about it in the top 8 debate, 2 weeks ago?
Yes, exactly. And that's Amerigo.
Amerigo.
Unfilled. I mean, it's a brilliant game. You just drop a handful of cubes in the cube tower. The number that fall out, you count up the largest number of the same color. So let's say 4 black cubes come out, and a green, a blue, and 2 yellow. Well, then that means you get 4 actions, and you get to pick any one of those colors that show up. I think that's a phenomenal action point selection system. You get to choose any one of those 4 actions of the colors that are available, and every player gets the maximum allotment of whatever they choose. So brilliant. That's one of the best examples of how smart of a mechanism designer or a mechanic specifically that Stefan Feld is.
I can't hate you on that. The only reason it didn't make my list is because I figured it was going to be on yours.
Yep.
It's a phenomenal game. I
It was.
enjoy it. It's up there with the Felds. I liked it maybe a little bit less than you and our mutual friend Dom who played it with us. But I did really enjoy it. It's a Feld game. I'm probably going to have to own it myself here soon because I collect them.
Yep. Yep.
So
Absolutely.
my number one game on my list, I've talked about before, but I haven't talked about in a while. And I talked about it specifically on one of our discussion topics of the games that I haven't played in the longest.
Oh wow.
It's about evolution. So yeah, it's evolution.
Okay.
It's a really enjoyable card game. I like it. There are action points because you're trying to decide how to use your cards. Do I do it here? Do I use the card over here? The selection of do I grow my body? Do I grow my pack? Do I make a whole nother species, carnival? So like I said, it's kind of cheaty. There is some action selections, but it's more about the card play. Trying to bank as much food at the end of the game. I really need to get this to the table to see if it's got to stay in my collection or not. I really do enjoy it. It's one of the first games that I ever bought. So yeah, it's evolution. I'm not going to harp too much on it, but it really needs to get to the table. And Nate, why is Blood Rage not on here? It's one of the top games in the Board Game Geek for this category. Yes, we just talked about it. I don't know if you missed it. We just recently said Blood Rage is not on here because one, yes, we both have played it, but we don't remember it well enough to make a sound argument for it. It's been a while. We don't really remember the action points part of it. All we really remember is the card drafting part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you can clarify why you think it should be on here, then by all means we can clarify that. But it really has been probably 3 or 4 years since
4 years since we played it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Same with me.
Yeah, because you and me both played it at our friend's house, and
Mm-hmm.
that was the last
At his
time.
old house. That's the thing. That's the last time I played it was when he was living in the smaller house.
That's right. That's right. I totally forgot about. I forgot that I've been to two different houses of his. So however long that's been, holy cow. So
Yeah.
let's get into the debate. We like to debate these top 8 games that we've picked from Board Game Geek, and they include, first off, our number 1 seed, Pandemic Legacy Season 1.
Going up against the 8 seed above and below.
Then we have our number 2 seed, Android Netrunner.
Going up against our number 7 seed, Western Legends.
Our number 3 seed, Eldritch Horror.
Going up against our number 6 seed, Burgle Brothers.
And probably the funnest part of this bracket, our number 4 seed, Dead of Winter.
Going up against our number 5 seed, Horrified. And what's interesting about this one is, yeah, we have Eldritch Horror in the bracket above it, but this is literally our horror bracket right here. You got zombies and universal monsters.
Right, exactly. Absolutely. No, this is a really neat category. I like it a lot. And honestly, like I'm not super invested. There's a lot of these games I really enjoy, but I can see this going just about any way.
There's
So
one game that is, well, okay. There's 2 games on here that are my favorites.
okay.
The ones that I'm going to push hard for. You already know one of them. We're talking about it right now. But can you guess what the other one is?
I'm gonna guess Horrified and Western Legends.
Yep, those are the 2.
Yep.
As you can tell, there's an expansion right above my head over here for Western Legends.
Yeah, I know you all too well, sir. Let's begin with our first bracket. But before we do, let's talk about how we actually do this. So the first round, we will be flipping a coin, and Daniel and I will each be arguing for one of the 2 sides. We'll make our opening points for them, which will carry on to probably the next rounds because we like to metagame this a lot. And then we will pick one of them between it. We have a number of categories that we like to use to break these down. Do you want to start by telling us the categories?
Sure thing. We have ease of play, which is the simplicity or familiarity of the mechanism. If it's a worker placement, you've played a lot of worker placements, or in this case, action points, so pandemic. The likelihood to get to the table, whether it's the mechanism or the theme, and if they lend themselves to a lot of analysis paralysis. Those are the ease of play categories. The next
Very
one
good.
on our list here is replay value, length of time and scaling well, minimum number of plays, and expandability, which includes already existing expansions, up to 1 possible future expansion, or an expansion that has been confirmed by the designer or the publisher. You want to do the next 2?
Sure. That is art and production. Component quality, art and pieces, and then graphic design. Specifically, how well the graphic design caters to the ability to play it. And then we have meaningful choice. I think you didn't say meaningful choice yet, right?
No.
I wasn't paying attention. Meaningful choice, and that is how well you can impact other players' strategies, how well your choices impact your future strategy, and the ability to make non-arbitrary, meaningful choices on your turn. The real question is, if you make a choice on your turn, does it have a meaningful impact, or can you just play like one of your cards random and have just as much of a chance as any? And then lastly, we have immersion, game immersion, theme matching mechanisms, player interaction, table talk during there, not so much gameplay interaction, but table talk, and memorable moments. Which games allow you to have those big, giant stand-up moments?
Yeah, so both of those sound really good. That's what we do. And if all else, remember when I told you? Fan vote. As we broke down, we have 5 categories, each with 3 subcategories. This is why fan vote comes into play here, because it can be important where we're saying, okay, it's a wash. We can't come to an agreement on anything.
Sure.
The poll decides who moves on.
Yeah, exactly. So let's begin right off the bat. We have Pandemic Legacy Season 1 versus Above and Below, and I will be arguing the first one.
Alrighty, so your game is Above and Below. Can you see that by any means?
Yes, I can. I can see the above part,
Well, yeah.
and it's below anything else on the page. So above and okay, so above and below. Ryan Lockett, you said it. He's brilliant. He uses dice. I really enjoy how the characters interact with each other in this game. You're basically using the characters as your action points, more or less, and
Mhm.
but in a way where, depending on whether they are above or below ground, how you use them is really impactful. I I don't remember. This is not the storybook one. It's been a while since I
No, no, no.
played
There
it.
is a storybook. This is what started the storybook for
This is
Ryan
sorry.
Lochte games.
Yeah. Okay. And it's been a long time since I played it, but I've always enjoyed it. This is probably the first Ryan Lockett game that I played that I really did enjoy. Until then, I was kind of like ho hum on his stuff.
Hmm.
But this one was what set him apart from everything else because it did something so different, and how well the characters work. It's just a really good implementation of a great game.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you on that fact. This is the game that put Ryan Lockett on my map. Um, but that's where the actual adventure book spawned the other games I was talking about. You got your Sleeping Gods and your Near and Far, and he's got that newest one that's coming out that isn't going on Kickstarter. That is another successor to Above and Below, Near and Far, and I
Sleeping Gods.
no, I forget what it's called, but it's along those lines.
Oh, it's Now and Later.
Now and Later, yeah, yeah, it's Now or Later, the candy. No, but it's in that same context. Now or Later, I can't remember what the name
Now
is.
or Never. Yeah, I don't know.
You might it might be Now or Never, honestly.
Yeah, I
Uh,
don't remember.
if someone knows about it in the chat, go ahead and let us know. My big thing about Above and Below, I like the game. I own the game. But it can overstay its welcome.
Yes.
And a lot of times, the action point part of it itself, people aren't using them for the resource management or stuff like that. They're doing it to go into the adventure, to do the adventure book, and using the dice on that action, which is fine. But you're not really playing the rest of the game. You're just going in there to see what happens. You're going on an adventure. And so that's where it can get a little lost. It's losing. You're not playing the full game. You're just playing what you. Yeah, Now or Never is what it's called. Pandemic Set Legacy Season 1, though, if we call Risk Legacy the granddaddy of all legacy, this is the one that really put legacy games and campaign games on the map.
Yes.
This is one of the biggest games on BGG. A lot of people were talking about it. It does a lot of things that we've never seen before. We kind of saw it with Risk Legacy, but people tend to avoid Risk. So Pandemic, the hobby gamers already love that game. And then he puts a legacy on top of it. It's spawned how many legacy games now? It's got 3 in this series alone, not to mention all the other legacy games that are out there. So when you break down to our list here, it's easier to play than Above and Below. I have to say that it is a lot easier, even with the campaign. If you know how to play Pandemic, you know how to play this game. It leads to a lot of interesting choices depending on how you play the game itself too, because what gets open, what happens, scarrings and stuff like that. So it does lend to a lot of that. The replay value, you're going to play at minimum 12 games if you're perfect at this, at minimum 12 games before you see the whole picture. More than likely, you're going to play average 15 to 20 games of this game. So it's got replay value as well. There's a lot of strategic value with the meaningful choices in this one. So as much as I love Above and Below, I can't see it getting past Pandemic Legacy.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think just because we don't want to give out too much spoilers, but Pandemic Legacy, there's a reason it was number one for the longest time, and it unseated Twilight Struggle when it did.
Mm-hmm.
It's a phenomenal game. It really did put Legacy on the map, and it really does use the action point selection system. You have 4 actions. That's it.
Yeah, so I can't argue against it as much as I really love Above and Below. I love Ryan Lockett games. So it's just hard for me to do it. In fact, my book, the storybook for Above and Below, is signed by Ryan Lockett.
Ah, well, way to brag there. Well, but my copy of Firefly is signed by Alan Tudyk, so ha.
I have his autograph too. It's sitting on my wall. Not
Oh,
this wall,
well,
on the wall in the living room.
on the board game, so
Yeah, but now you can't play that board game.
I have a book signed by the amazing Jonathan that I found at a thrift store, and it wasn't made out to me, but still, it's signed by him, so it's cool. On to the next round.
This one's gonna hurt me. This one's gonna hurt me.
Android Netrunner versus Western Legends. And Daniel, you will be going first on this round. And Nate added the clarity on that. Now or never is the name of the Loran Locket game. Now and later is a candy.
So I get Netrunner.
You get Netrunner. Have fun. I am willing to make a gentleman's agreement if you want to say this.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. I'll do Netrunner. We take our bias out of this. It's a very well liked game and it's well received. It is action point games, and it's a great production for what it is. I think it's phenomenal, especially for how old it is too.
Yeah,
because it's been a while. It was Fantasy Flight, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, Fantasy Flight made the remake.
Okay, yeah, but it's been around since what, early 2000?
Mm-hmm. Probably give or take.
Because we did the board game breakdown with Kevin Wilson. He's the originator of this, correct?
He's the originator of Android.
Yeah.
Richard Garfield made Android Netrunner.
Netrunner, okay, yeah. You do have a lot of good choices. You have to use your actions efficiently to defeat the other side. It's a phenomenal game. It's not something I enjoy, which is weird because I love the theme on this. I love the cyberpunky feel theme. It's just this one, again, we talked about it in the last podcast. The Richard Garfield games, I like most of them. There's some that don't hit. This was one that didn't hit me, but it's well produced. It's not easy to learn, I'll tell you that much. It took me a while to figure this one out. It does lend itself to replay value because there's so much for it. Mm-hmm. Game immersion, you do kind of get that feel, especially a lot about how the techie feel because of the wording that they use and how they describe things. You do get that feel when it comes to the immersion. But yeah, that's all I got for Android Netrunner.
My apologies. Your description put me to sleep. No, I'm kidding. Android Netrunner, one thing that I wanted to point out to it, what I think is really neat about Android Netrunner and why it's so good for this category is because it is literally action point selection. You have a set number of points that you're actually moving a token on your card. But what sets it differently is this is one of the few examples where there's asymmetric action point selections.
But see, that's a con for me. Yeah, I get the asymmetric part, but the fact that they use two different terms for doing the same thing makes it difficult for people to remember it.
Yes, I agree with that. But the fact is, it's an asymmetric game, and the action points also reflect that. Because if you're the runner, you have 4 points on your turn, if I'm not mistaken. But if you're the corp, you get only 3, but you also get like a bonus of, I think, drawing a card at the beginning of your turn, where it doesn't. And then on top of that, the corp is just trying to fend off the runner. The runner is trying to make runs on successful things to steal victory points from the other person's deck. I think that's a neat aspect alone, is the fact that only victory points exist in the corp's deck, not in the runner's deck. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how they used to run the tournaments or how they still did. But I believe if you came out, you either had to be a runner or a corp set in stone, or if I'm not mistaken, you had to have one deck of each ready to go. So that way, if you're playing as the corp side or the runner side, you have a good balance either way.
Another big detractor for this is really only a 2-player game. That's the big issue with it.
Yeah,
that's a big issue, especially when we're talking about expandability. Western Legends could hold up to 6.
Yeah, it definitely beats it as far as the player count goes, and it's mostly quicker because it's a longer of the TCG ones. But as far as extra content goes, not even close. So Western Legends, let's talk about that. This is easily the most thematic Western themed game I've personally ever played, that I've heard of, and I know a lot of people agree with me. It is straight up sandbox. You can do just about anything you want. I know I'm a big fan of playing cards. Podcast listeners know this about me, is I love playing cards. I used to like gambling a bit, not anymore because it's too random. But playing as a Western legend, gambling, and getting victory points for it in a Euro style. Mwah.
And not
Brilliant.
just that, incorporating poker into a board game and making it thematic to what you're doing. It's phenomenal.
And we've seen that with a Western game before, Tiny Epic Westerns, but it didn't implement it well, not in comparison.
No.
Where this, it's just a small little thing. If you want to go rob the bank, if you want to go do a shootout, if you want to go chase the train, I don't remember half the stuff, but you can buy.
The train is in the expansion.
Yeah, there's so many different options though. Like you can act out any Western game you have. So as much as I do like Android Netrunner, I'm gonna vote for Western Legends on this.
I have to agree with you on that fact. I'm not a fan of Netrunner. I try to take my bias out of it. It does some neat things, but the convoluted terms, and I like the victory point thing that you were saying. It's been a while since I played it, but I do remember it. But Western Legends, when you go to like game immersion, I do feel like I'm playing a Western. I could be a bad guy. I could literally be Billy the Kid and be a cattle rustler and stealing them and selling them and get my victory points that way. Or I can be a lawman and, you've done it before. You arrested me, and that's how you won the game because you got the victory points for taking me out. And I think that's a phenomenal thing. It really does give you that Western feel.
Yeah, I agree. Cool. So Western Legends moves on.
And it's got to go up against Pandemic Legacy Season 1.
Good luck on Western Legends. But if there's one game that could actually put up a good fight, it's that.
Yeah.
It really is. Next one is Eldritch Horror and Burgle Bros. And I will be taking off the lead for this.
What I feel bad for this one is this is your least favorite bracket.
Easily, yeah. I'm not a fan of either of these games, but I will try and argue them.
Yours is going to be probably your favorite of the group.
Eldritch Horror, huh? Okay, so Eldritch Horror, you're going around the map, you're doing standard Cthulhu-y things in the Cthulhu-verse, being Cthulhuites, like anti-Cthulhuing the world, if you will. You are doing your Cthulhu-based actions, trying to battle against Cthulhu.
No. See, here's where you're wrong. Yes, Cthulhu is one of the gods in the base set, but there's 3 others in there.
Okay. Which all want to be Cthulhu, because they're not that cool. And then each of your actions is various ways of like the exciting moving around the board, de-Cthulhuing the earth. I'm trying to remember. It has been a while, so forgive me. No, it's a cooperative game where you're going around the world. Yes, you have to go against an elder, but you are trying to essentially close the gates and rid the world of said elder. The action points are solid. If you liked Pandemic but didn't like, or if you like the idea of Pandemic and didn't like how unthematic it was, because it really is fairly abstract, and you love Cthulhu's universe, Eldritch Horror is a good option for you if you don't mind sitting down for like a few games. The only thing I can tell for anybody is seriously like know that you're getting into a 4-hour game.
Yeah, it's a long game.
5-hour game, even. Just expect a 5-hour game. So when it's less than that, it doesn't seem as bad. But don't go into it thinking that it's going to be quick. Because
the thing is, it's a Fantasy Flight game. If you're going in there thinking a Fantasy Flight game is going to take less than an hour and a half, what games have you been playing for Fantasy Flight other than like say Keyforge?
Elder Sign.
Okay, I'll give you Elder Sign. And LCG is actually, they trimmed it down, but like in their heyday when they were huge, when you had like the Twilight Imperiums, the Eldritch, the Arkham Horrors and stuff like that, they were big games. And so that's what you're going to expect with Eldritch Horror. I enjoy the game. I have pretty much everything for it. So you know how I feel about it. Burgle Brothers, on the other hand, we just talked about it in our last podcast. You got a lot of game in a small box. It really is. It comes in like a little bookshelf style box. It's real small. A lot of game in there. It has a lot of really good choices because you got to work as a team to burgle this place and escape on the 3rd floor. You're exploring tiles. You're stealing treasure. You're trying to get through security. You're trying to get away from the actual security. You're trying to disable like locks and stuff like that. So you do feel like a heist, a big movie heist in there. It's got good variable player abilities. It's much shorter than Eldritch Horror. That's the big thing going for here. However, for me, as much as I enjoy Burgle Brothers, I'd have to give Eldritch Horror. It just, other than like the length of time and stuff like that, it just feels a little bit cleaner to me.
Yeah.
The pieces in Burgle Brothers are a bit clunky, the tiles, and then you have these little wood pieces to create your wall. It's a little pawn to be for the security guard, and then you have to put stickers on your meeples for your characters. So it's a bit clunky. There's good in it, and for a small box game, it's awesome. It's not my favorite of the Fowlers. I prefer hardback, but it's good. We have a mutual friend who really digs this game, and I don't blame him. It's fun. I'll play it, but to me, Eldritch Horror just scratches that epic itch more so than this does, and more thematic in a way, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I do agree with you. I think Eldritch needs to move on. Even though I strongly dislike the game. I'm not a fan of Burgle Brothers either, and that's just because, yeah, I played it with two other people who really knew the game well, and that was just not as fun of an experience for me because it doesn't do anything at all to stop the alpha gamer.
Mm-hmm.
And not saying that's a necessarily bad thing. I normally don't care, but I really did play a game that seemed like it was incredibly way too long. And I forget exactly how it happened, but I was more or less stuck. I remember they were going for it, and I was like, I couldn't do hardly anything at a certain point.
Yeah,
I was
there's points where you're, depending on what, like the security level or the cameras or the alarms, there's a point where you could just get stuck in a corner and you don't know how to get out of there until like the alarms are deactivated.
Yeah, exactly. And that was really kind of a sour thing for me because they got to spend about an hour of the game enjoying it, and I sat there and just my turns were like, all right, I guess I'll just do that. That's fine. So I mean, I there's definitely more meaningful choice in Eldritch Horror. It's more thematic. It makes more sense, and it's cleaner. So I completely agree. Eldritch Horror.
All right, so Eldritch Horror moves on. So finally, we have Dead of Winter versus Horrified.
And I'll be leading this one. This is gonna be tough because I really like both of these games.
I dig both of these games. You get Horrified.
Horrified. Yeah, let me tell you why Horrified is better than Dead of Winter. First off, if we're talking purely action selection, this really is just 4 actions. That's it for your turn.
Depending on the character you're playing.
Yes, but Dead of Winter is technically beholden to the dice, and the actions that you have, you basically have a number of dice equal to your action points, or action points equal to your dice, but you could roll really bad, and it's pretty bad for you. Now, that's about the only bad thing I could say about Dead of Winter, because Horrified, it isn't as thematic, other than the fact that each of the 6 monsters are very much thematic as to how they work. And God, I want an expansion for this game so bad.
So do I.
Yeah, you have to defeat 2 to 4 monsters depending on your difficulty level. You are traveling around the town, getting items, and doing your best to challenge against these 6 different monsters who act very differently. For example, the Invisible Man. You have to find items and prove that he exists from different locations. Frankenstein and the Bride. You have to get them to be humanized, basically, and have emotions, and then have them meet. Don't want a meeting beforehand because then it gets terrible. Like the Mummy, you have to solve like this ancient riddle of like moving scarab beetles around. I can't describe it enough. It is absolutely brilliant for what it does. It's cleaner. It is more streamlined. It's easier to teach than Dead of Winter. It has the same horror theme. The only knock between the two is that if you're looking for more of a stronger theme and you're okay with more of a dark, deeper theme, then Dead of Winter does beat it. But if you're looking for like a quick, like 45-minute, I just want to go in here and beat up some baddies, Horrified is your game.
So I have to argue against that, and this is going to be difficult because I agree with everything you just said. Dead of Winter is a really well-produced game, so it does really well in our production. So is Horrified. I think the hidden goal cards can lead to really good table discussion, table talk itself, because you don't know what someone's doing. If they're holding back cards and you need food, that's a really intriguing mechanism that you don't see a lot. And my favorite part that Dead of Winter has is the crossword cards. But here's a flaw with those crossword cards. As good as they are and the options that you get from them, a lot of the times you forget to draw the card and move on and be like, oh, we forgot to do that before we started doing our turn.
Right.
Now, what you were saying about the...
I wouldn't say that's necessarily a flaw with the game. I mean, I'm not saying it's a flaw with the player either, because the game is so thematic and so rich. You're so engrossed in it that that you're just so excited and you forget to do that, the potentially bad thing. It is a thing about it, but at the same time, that's kind of almost a testament to to the
No, it's no, I don't disagree with you on there, but it can be a problem because it's supposed to be a big part of the game, and you do tend to forget about it because that's the story element for the game itself.
Right.
What else is good about it? It's got zombies in it, and I know a lot of people are tired of zombies, but they're not the focal point. They're just there to help you speed along. You know, you got to protect the colony, but you also go to these areas. If you make noise, they're going to come. It's more about the player interaction itself. If there is a hidden betrayer, there is an ability where you just play it as strictly a co-op and you don't do the secret gold cards. I've played both versions. I don't mind either way. It just depends on what people like. But I have to agree with you. As much as I love Dead of Winter, it was my favorite game for a while there. I think Horrified just does everything we talked about simpler, better, and you have more fun with it.
Yeah. I'm okay with, like, if we want to talk about the things, ease of play, it's definitely Horrified.
Yeah.
Meaningful choices. Just
It just
because
depends on which version of Dead of Winter you're playing, though. If you're playing the straight co-op, there's less meaningful choices than you are if you're playing with the Hidden Betrayer, because there's those choices in there where I'm like, okay, I got to do this or I got to do that. I got to use my player ability because you keep holding those cards. It's more
right.
in depth if you play it the Hidden Betrayer mode.
Yeah, I would say so too, but even then, still, you're beholden to the dice rolls plus the random card decks that are in each of the locations. That's a lot of random that you're not going to know and you can't mitigate.
Yeah.
So I would say meaningful choice goes to Horrified.
Yeah, I'll give you that as well. Game immersion, as I give to Dead of Winter when it comes to the theme matching the mechanism, because you're in the zombie stuff. Replay value, Dead of Winter gets that one, except for the scaling wheel and time. I think Horrified beats that out of the water, but the expandability, the replay value itself in the expansions makes. What are you looking for?
Horrified. It's only 2 to 4, right?
Yes, I believe so. 2 to 4, or maybe 5.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
I believe it's 2 to 6 for
6 for Dead of Winter. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, sure, the time is more, but scaling, it's still better.
Yeah. But aren't production as nice as Dead of Winter is? The newer one, The Long Night, is much nicer than the original version because you got the cardboard pieces rather than the paper pieces. But Horrified, I mean, for its price point, you got minis in it, really good standees compared. The standees aren't that bad with the Dead of Winter, but they give you the better stands that don't pull up your cardboard that has to go into it. And so just for that alone, that's better production value for me.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you on that. But the only thing is, I would say the art goes to Dead of Winter, but pieces and design go to Horrified. I would agree with that. So that means Horrified moves on.
Yeah, we're going to be moving on to the semifinals. You want to tell the people what the matchups look like in the semis?
Sure. In the semifinals, we have Pandemic Legacy, our level 1 seed, versus Western Legends, our number 4, or now our number 4. And
it was our number 7.
Yeah, it was number 7. And Eldritch Horror, our number 3 seed, versus our number 5 seed, Horrified. A battle of the odd games. That's never happened.
No, I don't think it has. Let's go ahead and look here. Our number 8 seed above and below was sitting in 5th place in a tie, which we'll explain a little later, at 7 votes. The next one here that was eliminated in the lowest set was the number 6 seed Burgle Brothers, it had a tie as well with 4 votes. And moving on to Dead of Winter, it was our number 2 vote getter at 25.
Wow.
And
Wow.
finally, Android Netrunner, number 2 seed on our list, was actually our number 1 vote getter at 31. So I think this is the first
Wow.
time our number 1 fan vote got eliminated in the
Wow.
first round.
That's rough. And that's not to say I don't love it, because I do. I mean, I don't think you can see it on the podcast, but just to the side of this box right here is my Android Netrunner sets. And I do like it a lot, but I also haven't played it in years too. And that
Yeah.
shows.
But
Absolutely.
it shows that it's well loved. It was our number 1 or number 2 on the ranking. It's our number 1 fan vote. It's just it's hard to get to the table nowadays. And being
No.
strictly a 2-player game, it's much harder to move it on when it's going up against something like Western Legend that plays 6 players and can do a lot.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. All right. Sounds good. Let's move on to our semi-final rounds. We have Pandemic Legacy versus Western Legends. Daniel, I will be starting this round.
Alrighty, so let's see here. What's your game you get? Pandemic.
Okay. I mean, once again, if we're talking just action point selection games, which we're not, I get, but if we are, very clear. You take 4 actions. That's it.
It's a very, very easy aspect on this if we're just going straight for the action point, but we're trying to find the better game.
But we're trying to find the better game. That's absolutely right. So let's talk about the specifics of it. As far as ease of play goes, I would have to say it goes to this one. And that's because the base game of Pandemic is a very simple concept. And to teach you Pandemic Legacy, it actually has you play Pandemic until you're comfortable with the system and you've played enough times for the prologue. Then it adds a little bit of rules here and there. It eases you into every step as you continue the story.
No,
I can't imagine anybody would have problems with it unless they had problems with the base set and just could not understand how the already simple mechanisms work. Adding on everything else storyline wise, it's going to work out for you. So I think ease of play goes to that. Now, art and production. This is tricky because I can't give out any spoilers at all, and I won't. The art is both really good on both games. I do think that. But the fact that the design and what you are doing throughout Pandemic Legacy and how it incorporates that into where all the symbology makes sense as you're playing. Plus, it's not a small feat to make a legacy game, something that has stickers that last on the board, something that you make permanent alterations to that are good. And now, if you're familiar with like games like, I don't know, Balderdash or like the simple party games from back in the day where you had to punch out the cards and they were really cheap, flimsy things, but you just needed to read a word. Who cares what it was? No, this is full quality cards that you're tearing up. Like this is like you're tearing apart 300-pound paper that is standard in games that they didn't waste time on that, and you're tearing those components apart. You know, I think just every factor in that, pieces, design, art, all of it hit for Pandemic Legacy. That's just my opinion. Meaningful choice, same thing. The choices you make during the game permanently affect your future choices, not just in that game, but every future game you play. It's amazing. There is no such thing as an arbitrary choice. To a degree, there will be some times where you are beholden to how the cards lay out, and you will just get stomped. And I will admit that when I played this, one of the first times, I played October, and we were playing a 4-player game, and we all took one turn and lost. It happened. I admit that.
Yeah. But and that's my big thing about it too, is that's going to be my big argument against it. Yeah, you're talking about October and you did the one thing, is that it handicaps you as you're going along too. So if you're doing too well, guess what? You're taking these cards that can help you out and you're screwed now. There's going to be a point where if you play the regular Pandemic, I forget what they're called, but they're cards that, All Quiet Night and stuff like that. I forget what they're
With the
called.
event, yeah.
Yeah, the events. They're out of your deck. You can play so well that you have none in your deck, and it's just bad card after bad card after bad card. And that could lead to arbitrary choices because, oh, I played so good, so I'm getting punished for it. That can take people out of it. Not to mention the fact that you're destroying cards, which can be a problem with some people, destruction of components. And a big flaw for this one, even though it's older, it's not like some of the new legacies or campaign games that are coming out where it's replayable after you're done with it. Mind you, I probably wouldn't replay it because I haven't even played my season 2 because everybody's just like, more Pandemic? And that's one of my major cons with this is, it adds a few rules here and there, but you're basically playing the same game at least 12 times up to 20 times. Yeah, it's fine. But with Western Legends, I could play one way and play a completely different way and still be able to play the game. Your action points, yes, they change, but I could be a bad guy in one game and be a sheriff in the other game. I could play poker and still compete with you who decided you're going to be a cattle rustler and you're going to steal all these cattle and take it over to this ranch and get your money. And so there's so many choices, and I think that's why I love the sandboxes. Yeah, we got all our action points, but how do we do it? With Pandemic, your action points are you can do this, this, or this. That's it. This one is like, I can go here, I can do that, I can do this, I can do that. These are my action points. I can do it however I want. Oh, I got a horse. Well, my action point of move is no longer 2. I can do 4 spaces because I have a horse. Oh, I bought a gun. Now I can do this, and my outlawedness can be helpful if I'm getting attacked by someone who's playing a marshal. And so for me, I agree with everything you said. I like Pandemic Season 1. I just think Western Legend feels more epic in a scope, without going into spoilers of what happens in Pandemic, because you're literally playing the same way every way with a few rule changes here and there, especially one major rule change that happens. I'm not gonna lie, it's there, but it's still, even when that rule happens, it's the same game every game.
Yeah, I mean it does. Yeah, more or less it does flip it on its head, but it is like the opposite side of a coin. I mean, as far as game immersion goes, I would say that yes, I think theme matching mechanism, it does aim a little bit more toward. Even then, I don't know. I was about to say it leaned towards Western Legends, but the fact that the legacy thing, like how these diseases spread, permanently damage the like. I mean, I don't want to compare it to the real world, but right now, look at how some countries are coping with the pandemic versus others. That's proof. Like that is
No. I can argue the thematic part of this. No other country is letting, like, our CDC is no way going to be allowed to go into China to fix what's going on over there. So
yeah, exactly. Like
so
like it's just
they
like
barely let the World Health Organization in after the fact of China's major outburst. So it's
right.
not really matching thematically there.
Well, that's because how it evolves throughout the game. But what I'm saying though is that like if something bad happens in a location without specifics, that part is permanently like damaged. Like that part of the board has like this residual scar that you remember every time you're like, oh god, I have to go into
Yeah,
here.
but again, when it comes down to it, yeah, there's a scar on there and there's something that happens. You're still playing the same game. You got 4 actions that you can do. You can go somewhere, you can build something,
No. There's way more than that as the game progresses. That's how it starts, but there's way more
but
on
you're
top of that.
still playing Pandemic the whole way through. I
Yes.
can play Western Legends and be something completely different the next time I play.
So then, what do you think that's the biggest benefit to it? Like,
I think
which
game
category?
immersion goes to Western Legend.
Okay,
You do feel like you're a cattle rustler when you're playing as a cattle rustler. You
but
feel like you're a bandit when you're fighting against the law and stuff like that. And when it comes to the combat that we're talking about, it isn't a dice roll mechanism like you see in other games where it's like, hey, I got a 6 and stuff like. You literally play cards that have special abilities on them, so you want to hold on to your poker cards that you have because they're special abilities for combats, or you playing against whoever has the better high card and stuff like that. I love that aspect of it. The only real lucky part of Western Legends is when you're mining for gold. But then that even feels thematic because you get really lucky when you're mining for gold. Sometimes you strike a vein, sometimes you don't.
Yeah, that's fair. No, okay, I'll give it immersion. I see your points, although with the exception that I do think memorable moments still go to Pandemic Legacy because you know what I'm talking about, and everybody else who's played Pandemic Legacy Season 1 knows there are.
Yeah, I could give you that.
But there are certain points in the game where your jaw drops. You're like, what? What? Like,
but the argument about that is you get that one time, whereas, and that's when everybody plays it. You get that once, just the once, and it's a big memorable moment. But I can play 3 different games of Western Legend and have 3 very different memorable moments.
yeah, they're just not quite as impactful, I feel.
I don't know. Sometimes it is when you don't think you're going to beat the guy in poker and you end up beating him on that because the it's flop exciting. Happens. Yeah. Or like with you, when you beat me I was leading the entire game and I got 3rd place in Western Legends because you arrested me. And it was just because of a card play. Yeah. There's a lot of memorable moments with Western Legends that I've had. You got that one big one that's impactful in Pandemic Legacy. But here's the flaw to that when it comes to memorable moments. When you're at the back end of the game, you're like, really? We went through all that and it ends that way? Okay. Because the last couple games can be anticlimactic.
I found them really exciting. I guess it's just a difference in opinions, but I actually really was very excited for the last couple games.
All right, but, so ease of play. We both agree Pandemic Legacy.
Yes.
Meaningful choice, Pandemic Legacy.
Okay.
Do you agree with that one?
Meaningful choice, Pandemic Legacy? Yes.
Yeah. Replay value.
Western Legends.
Game immersions, Western Legends. Art production, I would either consider a wash or I'd give to Western Legends. There are some really nice, hear me out, there is some nice, the graphic design is really well laid out in Pandemic Legacy. But again, it's the same production value except for a few things that we don't want to talk about that you get in base Pandemic. Whereas Western Legends, it's got great minis, it's got a decent graphic design, great card quality. The board to hold all the cards, the general store, really well done. The die, the 1 die or 2 dies that are in there for the mining, really well done. I think it's at least a wash, if not going to Western Legends. I'll give you the graphic design. I just don't think it's got the art or the production value. Because the art, your board, other than the changes that you're making with the stickers, is exactly what you would get in a Pandemic base game.
I'm doing my best to take my bias out of it. And I'm willing to call it a wash.
Okay.
I'm willing to call it a wash because it's, and not because I'm disagreeing with you, but because I'm agreeing with you, but I also, I think that they really are like that close in comparison.
Oh, they really are. Like I said, I'll give you the graphic design because it really suits Pandemic Legacy because the things that are going on the board, the boxes that you're opening, make the board better in ways and some of the new things that happen. But that's really it because the graphic design's really good in Western Legends. It's easy to read, easy to see, but you're not making permanent changes to the board. But the other two are so close, I'd call it a wash.
So that means that it's a wash all around, huh?
Yep. Which we already know who's moving on.
Pandemic Legacy?
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's saying something. Pandemic Legacy is a very popular game that's been around for quite a while, and Western Legends held its own.
Yeah, definitely. All right, let's move on to the next semifinal round. So Pandemic Legacy moves on to the finals. Now we have Eldritch Horrified.
Do we even need to argue this?
I guess technically, I know which one you want to move on. Actually, no. You you're a bigger fan of Horrified now, aren't you?
Oh wait, wrong one. This one goes over here.
And I am
This
the
one goes over.
first arguer this time. Please do not give me Eldritch Horror.
Hey, guess what? It's Eldritch Horror.
Is it really?
No, you got Horrified.
Okay, thank God. Okay, phew. Okay, easier to play for sure. Hands down.
You got horror in the title.
Eldritch Horror has dice rolling to determine outcomes.
Well, okay, give you the outcomes because I was like, there's dice rolling in Horrified.
Dice rolling in Horrified, and that's how badly you get attacked. That is a risk management thing. It doesn't determine whether you can or can't.
And can be mitigated depending on some of the stuff that you do in the game.
Right. Agreed. But I mean, as far as everything goes, I love the graphic design on Horrified. Eldritch Horror is okay looking. Like, it's not terrible.
As old as it is, I agree that it looks good. It could have been better.
Yeah. I don't like some of like the cardboard punch outs that they have. Like, some of them are like really small from what I remember. And there are some production things that I have with it. It's not that big of a deal, but I mean, overall, I would give ease of play, art and
Horrified.
production, more meaningful choice, and honestly game immersion too, because I don't feel
honestly the only one I would give to Eldritch Horror myself, as much I do like Eldritch Horror, I'm not hating on it. I play it solo from time to time. It's just because it's so long, I don't bust it out as often as I should. But yeah, the replay value is the only thing I'll give to Horrified, and that's just because to Eldritch Horror, just because of how much expansions that it has. Yeah. Because even I'll admit, it'll overstay its welcome.
Yeah.
Solo play, I'm playing for 3 hours too, so it's just.
Yeah, it's absolutely silly. So Horrified moves on to the to the finals. That was a quick round. And so now, just so our audience knows, when we get into the finals, we do not pick sides. So I'm putting away my coin of doom for now. We literally just argue it case for case. But before we do that, let's talk about Eldritch Horror and Western Legends. How many votes did they get, Daniel?
I'm a little sad here, I have to say. Actually, I'm quite sad about this. Western Legends, one of the best games out there in this point, to the fact that it almost took down Pandemic Legacy, was tied with Burgle Brothers at 4. Those were the 2 lowest vote getters out of our category.
I think it's just because Western Legends is still fairly new. It's only like a year old or something, or 2 years old.
It's about 2 or 3 now.
Yeah.
Because I think it's like 2018 or 2019, somewhere around there. Yeah, I get that. But it's also because it might be the Western theme. Not a lot of people like that kind of theme. And because they think Sandbox maybe more like a Fantasy Flight game, which it really doesn't have as much luck as some of those games do. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah. And Eldritch Horror was tied for 5th place with Above and Below at 7.
Nice. Very good.
On, we have Pandemic, Horrified. So just let everybody know, for our fan votes, our number 1, our number 2, our number 5, and our number 6, because we had 2 ties at the bottom, are eliminated. So our number 3 and our number 4 are going head-to-head on the votes.
All right.
This is good. Very intriguing to me.
Yes, definitely.
So which one jumps out at you?
Okay, so Horrified is very much a Pandemic clone.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you on that.
Yeah, except it's a hard time me saying it's a clone because of the way you get the items and use them towards the victory.
Yeah, well,
it's kind of like a flip on the Pandemic formula, but it's
and it's a pickup and delivery with Pandemic actions.
Yes. Yeah. So, with that being said,
there's one that easily jumps out at me.
Which one?
Replay value.
Oh, Legacy. Yes.
Yeah.
Agreed. Okay, I agree with that. Immersion does actually leap out at me because their mechanisms are so similar. I think Pandemic, because it adds the storyline onto it, I feel like that's definitely the bigger.
Oh man, imagine if they made Horrified a campaign game.
Horrified Legacy. Oh buddy. All right. Now, art and production, ease of play, meaningful choice. Those are our last three. Ease of play, I would give to Horrified. And
Yeah,
that's
I was gonna say,
because they're both the same game as far as function on how to learn it, but this only has 6 monsters. This has 12 chapters.
and not just that. When it comes down to it, here's your character. They got a special ability. That's one of your actions. You can do this. You can do this. You can move this. You can pull them as well. It's very simple. It's actually for me easier to teach Horrified than it ever was for to teach Pandemic.
Yep. And our friend Nate is disagreeing. What? Feel free to disagree with anything that you think, and feel free to explain your arguments in the comments. We totally will list them off and consider them during there. Might not agree with them, but we will consider them. So that's 2-1 points right now. Let's talk about
Let's go art
meaning,
and production.
huh?
Let's
Art
go
and
art and
production.
production. I personally think, especially for its price point when it comes to like the graphic design, in the minis that are coming in, art and production goes to Horrified slightly.
Because of how campy they make everything feel, how they play
Yes,
into
it feels like you're in one of those 20, 30, 40
right.
movies. I
The
just
the
think,
only
go
the
ahead.
only counter argument I would have for that, and this is the only thing that I have. Oh, he disagrees with Horrified Legacy. Oh man, I would love that. Um, but the only thing that I disagree with it is that the colors on the three different items on Horrified are not specifically color coded. There's no markings that specify one color versus the other. That's a very, very minor quibble, and the same could be argued with Pandemic on how the cubes are actually the same shape. So if you're completely grayscale colorblind, you're not going to see them anyway. Um,
Yeah.
but I mean, it's a very minor quibble, but that, if anything, that would be the one knock towards Horrified. But I do really like the style that they use on it. I do think the art is better than Pandemic
Hmm.
Legacy. I don't know about the components per se, but that's not to say that components are bad. Yeah, I would probably give that to Horrified. I'm okay with that.
All right, so meaningful choice. Where are you going on this one?
2 and 2, definitely Pandemic, without a doubt. And that's
Yeah, they pretty much do the same things in a sense. You have your special abilities and stuff like that. As much as it pains me to say I have to agree with you on the Pandemic,
mhm,
because what happens as you're going through the game, like if you're just going with the first game versus Horrified, they're pretty much the same thing. It's very simple. You
yeah,
have this many actions, you have this many things you can do, and then you do some bad stuff.
yep,
But because it expands itself as you're going through, there's much more meaningful choices as you're going through the game in Pandemic Legacy. And as much as it hurts me, I have to say that's what's going on. I'll have to move it on.
yep, yep, and bias out of it. Like, I mean, you know how much I do like Pandemic, and you know how
Yeah.
much I like Horrified too. Actually, I love that
Hmm.
game.
Yeah.
Um,
No.
and so it's hard to say that, but I mean, Pandemic really just is a more solid game. I can't argue that. Pandemic Legacy, sorry, not just Pandemic.
Yeah. Now, if I had to choose between Horrified and base Pandemic, I'm choosing Horrified hands down.
Yep. But I mean, it's so much to the point where Pandemic Legacy almost unseated my highest game, or my best game of all time. My favorite game, it almost unseated it.
I can see that. It's up there. I liked it. I enjoyed it. I'm glad I played it. I really do want to try the other two,
Yeah,
but it's not even in my top 10 favorite games of all time.
yeah,
I
yeah.
like, if for campaign wise, I prefer Gloomhaven. Even though I haven't got that far into it, I prefer Charterstone as a legacy game just because I love worker placement more. I'd play Horrified over Pandemic Legacy any day of the week as much as I love the story part of it. And I know that's weird to say. I really, how I feel about the Universal Monsters. I
Hmm.
own them all. I am buying more of the other ones that follow suit. I own the originals, and I just love it. But that's because I'm a huge fan of Prospero Hall too. But yeah,
Yeah,
I can't argue with Pandemic Legacy winning this action point selection. or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, action point. It's not action selection because action selection, you choose your action. That's like Puerto
action.
Rico.
Yeah, this
Race
is your
for the
action
galaxy.
points where you have so many
Not the
points to
same.
do something. I know, but I'm referencing something that was in the chat.
Yep. No, I know
Or
what
not
you're
in the chat, in the comment. Huh?
I disagree with it. That's why I'm clarifying it. But such a minor detail. It doesn't really matter. Now,
So as I said, it was our number 3 versus our number 4. Horrified being number 4 at 9. Pandemic Legacy Season 1 at 19.
That's a big gap, though. Almost twice as much. But, I mean, they're both solid, so it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And now I'm noticing it's calming a lot more for Horrified.
Yeah, I think so. It's because I think with Horrified, it hit big at one point. But after a couple plays and you see how all the monsters work and you figure out the ins and out, that's why it needs an expansion. It needs something that brings more to it. I don't know how they would expand it. We've talked about it, but I think the only one that I can think of getting into it is, say, the Blob from the 1950s. I don't know who's got the licensing for that anymore. So, because you have a hard time finding it just on digital release. You can find the 88 one, but just depends. If you're going to stick with the Universal monsters, maybe you add some other Universal stuff that's been added, like the Mummy with Brendan Fraser, that upgrade, or some of the other ones. I don't know how you do it, but it's campy enough it could work with the throwing like the Brendan Fraser characters in there. So we'll see. Or, as I say, and Nate doesn't agree with us, but give us a Horrified Legacy.
Yeah. I mean, can you imagine if they just took monsters from other universes, though? Like, let's say Godzilla
it would be great.
Jumps in there, you know?
I wouldn't do Godzilla, because the kaiju really wouldn't work with what's going on with the Universal monsters, because the kaijus are like 500 feet tall versus like a 6 foot, 7 foot zombie. But you throw in like the slasher films, your Krugers, your Michael Myers, and Voorhees. I think those would be phenomenal. But just again, with the licensings, I doubt it could happen.
Night from Outer Space, you know.
Mm-hmm. So there's an idea for the Horrified expansions. You do some of those campy movies like the Ants and stuff like that. But it's getting late. Right. Let's wrap this up.
All right. Well, we want to thank everybody for tuning in today. This has been a fun debate. Congratulations to Pandemic Legacy, as always. So we want to thank everybody for joining us. Nate, thank you so much for joining in on the chat. This has been a good fun. If you ever want to join in live, which you can, like our friend Nate here, or other viewers before, you can watch us live normally Monday evenings, Mountain Standard Time. We normally start around 6 or so. And that is on twitch.tv/everydayboardgames.
You can also find all video re-uploads on YouTube at Everyday Board Games 2020. And if you like what you found, please give us a like and a subscribe. It does us a big favor and helps us grow on the platform.
That's right. And if you ever come up with some ideas on your own or just want to say hi, absolutely. Send us an email at everydayboardgames2020@gmail.com.
As well as you can find all audio versions of these podcasts uploaded on most podcast platforms that under Everyday Board Games. That includes Spotify, Google, Amazon Music, and Podbean. As well as you can get in contact with us on Twitter at EBG Podcast.
So as always, we want to thank you for tuning in. I've been Daniel.
And I've been Daniel.
And thank you for watching Everyday Board Games.
Have a good one.